Good morning, Mr. Keith Beauchamp. Please tell us a little something about the Cold Case Initiative and a little something about yourself, sir, please.
Well, of course, I'm the director and producer of the Untold story of Emmet Till. I'm also the executive producer of the TV series named Justice Files on Investigation Discovery. Went on hiatus with it for a couple of years, but I'm coming back soon. The Cold Case, Civil Rights Cold Case Initiative was inspired after the reopening of the Emmet Till case in 2004, in which I was involved with. And what we were doing, the federal government decided to do, was to go back and revisit civil rights murder cases from the civil rights era to see if they warrant new investigations and possible prosecutions. And so this initiative is continuing on. In 2008, the Emmet Till Unsolved Civil Rights Act was signed into law by President Obama. We just recently had a reauthorization of this act, which allocates funding towards these unsolved civil rights murder cases for the next 10 years. But we just recently had a reauthorization of this same bill that was signed into law by by President Obama before he left office. And so what we're doing now, we're looking for cases that occurred from 1969 to 1980. And so what we hope to do is compile a great list of cases so that we can revisit these cases, to review them to see if they warrant new prosecutions, as well as investigations in general.
Yes, sir. Now you have a book that's out. Can you please tell us? Would you like to finish the interview?
Is being inspired. It's actually. I have to give credit to my mother for being the editor of this book. It's a number of things. I have to say it's more of a pictorial type book that chronicles my rise as a filmmaker in this industry, and a lot of my own writings and stuff that I wrote along the way is in this book itself. And I'm hoping that it will inspire some of the young to get involved with this movement that still exists in this country.
Yes, sir. And the cases, you're doing cases that's from Louisiana, or cases just all over?
Cases all over. We're hoping to compile a list of cases that warrants new investigations and prosecutions, unsolved civil rights murder cases, or hate crimes.
Okay, yes, sir. And how can we reach you?
Well, I'm on all social media platforms. You can reach me through Facebook. You can find my email address on the internet. Just typing in Keith Beauchamp's email. I'm on all social media platforms, Instagram and Twitter and so on, so you can reach me that way.
Yes, and we want to thank Mom and Dad for such a fine son. Yes, indeed.
Yes, I have to tip my hats off to my parents for giving me a great life and instilling in me the value for speaking for those who can no longer speak for themselves.
Thank you so very much.
They galvanized my movement to getting this case reopened. Also, I have to tip my hats off. Any Deltas in the house? Well, how you knew I was going to say Deltas? That was quick. Well, my mother is a Delta. And of course, the Deltas have supported me throughout my whole career. And they were very significant in pushing me along forward. When Ashcroft received a resolution that was presented to him by the Deltas that represented over 260,000 members at the time. And one of the things that he spoke about during the reopening of the case was actually receiving this resolution. So I have to continue to thank my mother and my fellow sorority sisters for supporting me, not only with this, but with my own career. And so I think that's important to say. I think it was William Faulkner, a great American writer, who once stated that the past is never dead, it's not even the past. And I say that because all that we're seeing today, as I spoke earlier and I stated, is nothing new. The new Emmett Tills of the world, I truly believe, and one can often argue, are those young black males who are being shot and killed, unarmed black males by police. Because every time you hear and see these stories, Emmett Till's name metaphorically comes back to fruition. So again, that's why I truly believe that this divine change in this country that we're currently looking for could actually happen through the understanding of the Emmett Till murder case. As you heard, his mother mentioned that he was the catalyst that sparked the American Civil Rights Movement. I guess you probably said to yourselves, how could that be? Well, in 1955, let me go back to 54. After, of course, in 1954, we had the landmark decision, greatest landmark decision of Brown versus Board of Education in desegregation of public schools. Off the heels of that amazing win by the NAACP came the murders, the Trinity killings, I would say, of Mississippi. The murder of Reverend George Lee took place in May of 1955. George Lee was a NAACP official, huge leader in Belzoni, Mississippi. He was shot and killed on his way home after a speaking engagement. He was known to have registered voters in the state of Mississippi. And he himself was the first black voter in Humphreys County, Mississippi. He was shot and killed. 2 weeks prior to Emmett Till's arrival was the murder of Lamar Smith out of Brookhaven, Mississippi. Lamar Smith was shot and killed in broad daylight in front of about 100 people on the courthouse lawn in Brookhaven, Mississippi. He himself was trying to register black voters. This is the atmosphere that Emmett Till entered into. And of course, we now know the story of Emmett Till. One of the things that we don't know is the people who Emmett Till inspired. Of course, Chancellor mentioned that he was inspired to become, an attorney, to work in the field of law because of the murder of Emmett Till. There were many others, especially at the time of the murder. You've all heard of Rosa Parks, right? There was a reason why she didn't get up from her seat on that bus in Montgomery, Alabama. And that reason, and you probably know by now, she mentioned that Emmett Till was foremost in her mind when she sat down on that bus. We all know, of course, Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King was 26 years old at the time. Of course, he took on the Montgomery bus boycott, but it wasn't just because of Rosa Parks' decision to not get up from her seat on that bus in Montgomery, Alabama. It's also because of the murder of Emmett Till. He felt that the murder of Emmett Till was an intimidation factor to keep black people away from the polls. 1955 was an election. What a lot of people do not know is how they come to know the story of Till. Well, yes, you would say, yeah, the media, that's one thing. Of course, the news traveled. But 4 days before Rosa Parks made her courageous decision, there was a great rally that was led by Dr. T.R. Howard, and that's someone that you should all read about, that many of us have forgotten. Probably don't know anything about him. Great leader of Mississippi, black leader, and they call him a black militant leader as well, Mile Bayou, Mississippi. And at the time of the Till murder, just like you see with all these killings of young black males and, of course, by police, there were rallies going on about Till around the country. And these rallies were led, the majority of them was led by Dr. T.R. Howard. So 4 days before Rosa Parks' decision, they have a rally at Dexter Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. Who's officiating over? The young 26-year-old Dr. Martin Luther King. And he was was at that moment, I would have to say the movement actually pressed forward quicker. And so this is one of those backstories not many people know about, but something that I would be actually revealing in the motion picture that we're actually currently doing. We're producing a movie Untold now that will start shooting in spring, which will be directed by Whoopi Goldberg. It's going to be her directorial debut that I'm producing. And so, again, this is a story that I firmly believe that could initiate the conversation of race that we need in this country, and to also give us a blueprint on how can we create the atmosphere for another great movement for change to take place. Because what we need to understand about the Till case, it was carefully calculated. I think people look at this murder case as just being a simple murder. It was not that. It was something that was thoroughly thought about and organized by members of the NAACP and those who were part of the Black resistance movement at that time. You're talking about a 33-year-old woman, late Mamie Till movement at the time, having all this power at her fingertips. And what she did was just amazing. I haven't seen anyone else in my day able to push the envelope forward and to make a difference and change the way she did. And so, again, through this story, I firmly believe that we could find a specific place to really push not only the movement for human and civil rights forward, but for us to somehow get along or communicate better with each other. Because I don't believe that you can ever eliminate racism. I think that's just a false hope that we all grab onto and we think could happen. I have to be realistic here. Racism is going to always exist. I think what we need to do at this moment is to learn how to embrace our differences. And that's why I go around to lecture about how can we collectively embrace differences that we have. So, I'm going to open the floor for questions, but I do want to reveal, I guess, now that I can talk about it, the things that I uncovered during this investigation. But one of the main reasons why the case was reopened in 2004 was that I discovered there was up to 14 people that was involved with the kidnapping and murder of Emmett Till. Not the two men, just the two men, Warren Ryan and J.W. Baton that you saw in the film. And out of the 14, I had to face the harsh reality that there are 5 Black men that was also participating in the kidnapping and murder of Till. By the time of the reopening by the time of the investigation and the reopening of the case, there were 5 people that we were actually looking at. And by the end of the investigation, there were only 2 that remained who actually, evidence was presented to a grand jury in 2007 on 2 of the people. And that was Carolyn Bryant, the white woman, Emmett Till Wilson, as well as Henry Lee Loggins, the Black man that you saw in the film. And so the outcome, of course, didn't turn out the way we wanted it. We were hoping to get Carolyn Bryant on culpable negligence charges, and of course Henry Lee Loggins on accessory to the murder itself. And unfortunately, a grand jury of their peers decided not to indict them. So where do we go from here? After that decision, it caused, I would have to say it inspired a lot, because what ended up happening in 2006, during the investigation, it inspired the Civil Rights Cold Case Initiative that was led by the FBI. This initiative was created to go back and revisit these unsolved civil rights murder cases from our civil rights era to see if they warrant new investigations and prosecutions. Because I was the inspiration behind the reopening of the Till case, I was brought in to assist the FBI and the Justice Department with their cold cases at that time. And so what I was used as a secondary resource. When they had problems getting people to speak on these civil rights murders or have them come forward, they would have me plant myself in those communities, and in return of exchange of information that I gathered on these new investigations, they allowed me to produce television series on it, which is how, basically my whole career, this is all I've been doing since I was 22. So, after the Civil Rights Cold Case Initiative was formed in 2008, you had the Emmet Till Unsolved Civil Rights Act, which was created, passed by Congress, and signed into law. It was actually presented by President Bush, and it was signed into law by President Obama. And so this new initiative was to allocate $10 million towards these unsolved civil rights cases for the next 10 years, which eventually expired last year. I think it was February of last year when it actually expired, which we had, of course, President Obama, before he left office, he signed a reauthorization of the bill, which now carries on and allowing us to continue to do this type of work. And so this is something I really want to talk to you guys about. This is actually why I'm here, to really do this type, to present this, to talk about race, but also to ask your help in keeping this movement going forward. And that is to assist in any way on really helping me compile a list of cases that must be pursued before it's too late. So with that said, I know I have a mouthful because it's like therapy for me. I would love to open the floor for any questions that you may have. No questions?
April, sorry.
Because I was a little secretive about it. The investigation is currently going forward with the Emmet Till case. In January of this year, an author by the name of Tim Tyson of Duke University, who's also somewhat a friend of mine, I have to say, wrote this book on the Emmet Till murder case called The Blood of Emmet Till. And in this book, he interviewed Carolyn Bryant, the white woman in Till Wilson at the time. And Carolyn comes out in the book and talks about how she fabricated the story in 1955. I think some of the confusion, I won't say confusion, but none of us was really truly shocked by it. We've always known that she lied in the court of law. It's just at the time when I began to hand over evidence in the case early on to federal authorities, there was no way we could get her on perjury charges. Because at the time, perjury only held a 2-year statute of limitation. So we were really trying to build a case on her. And so we all thought there was going to be a home run, but of course we stayed here. And I think a lot of us in here who are conscious about the culture of the South and what the white woman stands for in the South, we kind of understand why she was not indicted. And so what I'm hoping to do with these rational screenings that I'm doing around the country right now is to re-energize this movement and to get people to understand that Carolyn Bynum should have been indicted, and to also reveal some of the truths behind the case that people may not know. It's a case that I feel could really lay out the blueprint to what we need to be doing in this country in terms of fighting these social ills. So thank you so much. What's your name? Shalonda. Thank you, Shalonda. Thank you so much.
Yes, I agree with you when you say that race could never be, we could never get rid of race. However, one of the cold cases that we have in New Iberia is dealing with the Victor White case, whereas Victor White was handcuffed, put behind the New Iberia Police Department. Officer Cortese and his partner is the one that killed Victor White. And there's still not no real justice when it comes down to the murder of Victor White. We also simultaneously have a ULL student who killed one person in the back, shot another one, paralyzed him, and the third person that he shot was injured. But the young man, he never done no more than 11 months, 12 months in the St. Martinville jail. So when you look at white and the race itself, it's no way possible that we could say that it would ever be erased, because it would not. And then the killing point about the young ULL student that shot, that killed one young man that was allegedly running from breaking out of his truck, paralyzed the other one, and the other one was shot, was that he was seen by Judge Rubin. And Judge Rubin, you well know, is a black judge. So, you know, we pulling teeth there, and I want to thank you for continuously doing this type of work, because we have so much here embedded, particularly in the state of Louisiana. I don't know if you heard about what the one of the sheriff had stated about the release of, about the release of the 14 or the 1,500 young people that are being released. Yeah, that you know, he's gonna be missing his slaves.
You know, it's unfortunate, and I see that this is a recurring case. We're not getting the courtroom justice that we're belonging to. And you know, that's something that I had to realize even through this process of dealing with unsolved civil rights murder cases. In many of these cases, we actually had some of the perpetrators who are still living, but because of civil rights, you know, the civil rights violations at the time only held a 5-year statute of limitation. It was very difficult to do anything on the federal level, which is why a lot of this falls back on the state. But when you think about that, the state and local officials are the most corrupt.
That's right.
And so it is very difficult to see any kind of justice, especially putting these cases in front of the jury, the juries of their so-called peers, to actually get courtroom justice. It's just a difficult task. I just firmly believe that maybe we should have a big push, that if the federal government stepped in on these cases, therefore they should be the ones to prosecute. And I think that would be the greatest chance that we have to resolve many of these cases.
Then we're in a first-year law student class. I have to ask the question, when we say that the jurors have to be peers of those who are looking for defendants, if the belief that the peers share with those who perpetrated the crime, is it not inevitable that they will be released if their peers agree with their actions? So maybe we need to question the very crux of our system of justice.
I agree with that. Yes. Mitchell, how are you?
All right, all right. I'm an artist, and I'm an alumni of Southern. I'm very proud of. We sit on history here with the very union that's named after two gentlemen, Smith and Brown. A few years ago, I did an art piece dedicated to that incident and just pulled in a lot of other incidents from the civil rights movement, like the Birmingham, Alabama church bombing, the killing of some Black Panthers, just different situations. But I also did an exhibition at the Scotlandville Library, and I wanted to do a discussion, but I didn't want to go into it like blindly. So I started to ask questions about the Smith and Brown incident, and I found out that the case is still open.
Yeah, that's something that have troubled me for a long period of time, especially after tackling the Emmet case and dealing with other cold cases. It's something that I wanted to really address at one point. But at the time of the original Civil Rights Cold Case Initiative, when we started, we were only able to deal with cases from 1946 to 1969. Now, under the reorganization of the bill, we can now pursue these cases that happened in 1970 all the way up to 1980, which is why, again, I'm here today, because what I'm doing is I was asked, a few months ago I was asked to begin to compile a list of cases for the U.S. Attorney General Sessions, which is amazing. He wants to continue to pursue these cases. But I was asked by the DOJ to compile this new list so we can pursue these cases now. The problem that I'm having is, although I've already turned in like 22 cases so far, and I'm compiling the second list, there's not as many as I thought. You know, when we initially started the Civil Rights Cold Case Initiative, went into the Till bill, I was getting emails all the time about cases. But right now, it's so hard. I mean, I guess it's so difficult for people to come forward. Or maybe some people feel that nothing is going to be done. But I only have hope. And so I am in need of new cases, because I would hate for us to get to this point where we have this new legislature, these laws, Till bill. You know, I would hate for us to have it in a place where people are willing to work with us, to see justice can prevail in some of these cases, and we just let it fall on the wayside.
I also want to say one more thing. Some of you may know and may not know, I haven't been to the library in a few years, right across the way. On the third floor, I believe, the archives. When I started doing research on the Smith and Brown situation, they have a plethora of information in the archive. I mean, the third floor of the library with the shade collection and all that, they have a plethora of information. So if you don't already know, please visit the third floor in the library.
And Chancellor, I don't know, are we still doing cold cases?
Actually, we have worked with Professor Burnham with the Civil Rights and Restorative Justice Project in relation to the Smith-Brown, Leonard Brown's, Denver Smith. Professor Bell, we got the Southern University Baton Rouge campus to award them posthumously a degree in May 2017, and I know that there's some continuing work going on that Professor Bell has been doing, Professor Angela Bell. In addition, with Professor Burnham, Professor Margaret Burnham is a professor at Northeastern Law School in Boston, Massachusetts. So to kind of give you a kind of a historical context, she was in Mississippi. When we talk about Mississippi, and I know some of you are not as familiar with Mississippi, in 1964, there was a very famous event in 1964 called Freedom Summer of 1964. Freedom Summer of 1964 happened after the murder, the assassination of the then NAACP leader in Mississippi, Meg Evans. All right, Medgar Evers, of course, it was the murder of Lewis Allen, right? But Medgar Evers was killed. So from a historical standpoint, Evers is killed in 1963, in the summer of 1963. Okay, so all of these things are leading up to the 1964 campaign. There's a woman who is leading a party in Mississippi that is going to unseat the delegation to the 1964 Democratic Convention. Now, for those of you who, I know you don't have the time, but when the semester ends, there's a new movie coming out called LBJ. And all of this stuff, LBJ was a Texan. Mr. Garcia knows that. He knows that, right? So 63 and 64 are very, very important years in this movement. This is 10 years after Brown v. Board. This is 9 years after the Emmett Till situation, the bus boycott in Montgomery. So the leaders of that group of folks who spent that summer in 1964 were Bob Moses and Dave Dennis. Dave Dennis went to high school right down the street, a little high school down here down the street called Southern Lab, all right? Southern Laboratory. And he was a basketball player. And one of his classmates was a fellow by the name of Hubert Brown. All right? Now you say, well, who the heck is Hubert Brown? Well, if you do a little search, there's a fellow by the name of H-Rap Brown. So they played basketball right down the street. They walked up and down, H-Rap Brown. So they were the leaders. The leaders of Freedom Summer was a fellow by the name of Bob Moses. Bob Moses was the old man in the group. He was about 25, 26. Okay? All right. And Dave Dennis was 23 years old. All right? That is the same summer that Schwerner Goodman, the murders happened in Philadelphia, Mississippi, 1964. So they connected us on the 50th anniversary of Freedom Summer to Professor Burnham, who was then a 19-year-old in that particular group. They met at Tougaloo College. They planned and formed what happened in 1964. She became a lawyer in Massachusetts, a judge and a professor, and we have been working with her on investigating cold case killings of African Americans and others besides African Americans who stood up for civil rights. So that project continues on, and in fact, there's a case out of New Iberia that we're dealing with where some doctors were actually run out of town back in those days. So there's a lot of history and connection with respect to that, and it's a very important piece of work, because what you learn from those experiences is how to investigate and analyze cases. And when you get a moment after your finals are done, all right, you go see the movie Marshall, and you'll see how Thurgood Marshall used investigative techniques. So those are the kinds of skills that, again, are very, very important. So I'm glad that you brought that out. But yes, we're still doing that work.
Well, I look forward to working closely with you guys on it. And you know, this is to prepare you. I mean, you guys are first-year law students?
For the most part, there's a few.
This is truly going to prepare you for whatever is going to come your way. And at the same time, you're actually doing something that's going to help the community and, of course, the political and racial climate that we're currently living in.
I've been following Keith all summer, and this really moves me because I'm a mother, and there's a lot of young people here, and you're not moms yet. But just to wrap your brain around the fact that you've buried your child, and there's so many labels out there about the Black Lives Matter and the Kaepernick, but if y'all could actually understand the concept of what just took place here, and as women, how much power and influence we have on our sons. I'm an Italian woman, and my mentor is Mother Teresa. because that's who my history is the line of. Y'all have women like this mother here, and of course this mother here. When you educate yourselves to start the process to pass on the Martin Luther King and the Emmet Till and the movement and the history that this man is making, if y'all could actually grasp it, you'd probably be dumbfounded and in awe of. There's so much about labels that's not even the issue here. It's the movement of just passing the buck and then going to the next phase. And if y'all can wrap your brain around the level as a woman of what you can foresee of the future to make that change, it's really gonna actually move you. And I'm actually moved by how many women are in here in law, and I commend y'all. Thank you.
Jay traveled from Texas this morning. I'm not sure how long you're gonna be here, but tonight we have another screening, but it's more with the community, and we have a great group of panelists, and we're gonna really get even more deep into conversations about race in this country, community, and what we need to, hopefully we come up with some solutions of what we need to be doing. But it is just important that we understand that the power to change is at everyone's fingertips. Every individual in it. I don't truly believe in following the leader. I believe we all have to become leaders in our own way. And I just think it's important to not forget how far we have come and where we must go now. And in this case, the film, The Untold Story of Untold, the story itself, I think it generates the great energy that is needed to discuss these things so we can move ahead.
All right, with that, I know most of them have another class, and we drill down on them and how disciplined they have to be. All right.
Okay. Hi, good evening. And we're here at Southern University, right here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with the Chancellor, Mr. John Pierre of Lurville, Louisiana.
Hi, welcome to Southern University Law Center. It's great to see you, especially one of my classmates from good old Lurville.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, we just had our 40th class reunion.
I know, and I was working, traveling, and just made it back, so I couldn't attend, but I know everybody had a great time.
Well, I'm going to share some of the pictures with you. Tell us a little something about the segment that we just finished watching with the Emmet Till, sponsored by Mr. Keith Beauchamp. Mr. John.
Well, what we had here is an opportunity for our students to learn a little history and how law relates to justice. So we had the documentary related to Emmet Till's unfortunate killing in 1955, and I think that's a story that needs to be told over and over again, because it really reminds us that America is not finished with the road to justice, and that unfortunately Emmet Till incidents can still happen today. And in fact, we say that they do happen when we look at situations where unarmed African-American males are shot by police and they're not prosecuted or they're not convicted. And that is a constant reminder of how much work we have to do given the current environment that we see in places like Charlottesville and the really reemergence of what we call white nationalism in this country.
Yes, and when you're talking about the crimes, I'm thinking about Victor White Jr., who was killed out in New Iberia, Louisiana, and I called the father, Mr. White, because he's been on our program numerous of times throughout the years, and there's still no justification, if indeed that is such a word that we could use in this content.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the circumstances behind Victor White's death are very, very unusual. I know that there have been attorneys working to look at it from a standpoint of a civil rights violation. And again, I don't think people realize how tough those cases are, because usually you don't have witnesses, you don't have videotape, you have the reports, and there's always a suspicion that someone wants to alter the report such that it looks more favorable. And I can understand the suspicion even when we have clear footage of situations where, like in South Carolina, the young man was running away from the police. Or we look at the same thing in Oklahoma, this guy his back is turned to the female police officer, she shoots him. And so we have to confront these issues, and we have to deal with issues that happen in local communities, like what happened with Victor White.
Yes, and also Mr. Sterling, Mr. John, right here in Baton Rouge.
Absolutely. The Alton Sterling matter is still under investigation by the Attorney General. The Department of Justice did not find that there was a sufficient basis for a civil rights violation, but they uncovered some things that related to the actions of the police officer that should really disturb the community. And this is very, very important that community police relations are really dealt with, because what we have to deal with is the underlying issue of race.
That's right.
And race in America is something we must tackle, we must deal with. It is part of the DNA of American society.
That is absolutely correct. I'm loving you more and more. You know, just the idea, just the fact that we could get out this type of information. Now, also here, we're here with the Keep Beauchamp initiative dealing with the cold cases. Can you tell us a little something about the cold cases?
Yes, yes. So Mr. Beauchamp has really been the instigator, catalyst for cold cases being reopened, going back over a decade ago with his documentary on Emmett Till, with the Bush administration and Attorney General Ashcroft. And we even see in a situation where I don't necessarily politically agree with Attorney General Sessions, that he wants to do the same thing in terms of keep those cases open. At Southern University Law Center, we have been participating in the Civil Rights and Restorative Justice Project to look at some of these issues related to unsolved murders of civil rights workers or individuals who advocated for justice for African Americans going back from the 30s all the way to the end of the 60s. So this is something that we've been involved with. Our students have been doing work and investigating. And this is, again, part of what this law school was created for. It was created to create access and opportunity for justice. So this is a continuation of the very essence of what this law school is about.
Now, Mr. John, Professor Bell is also here.
Yes, Professor Angela Bell. She's done a lot of work related to what we call restorative justice, the Black Panthers, a number of different things that really relate to how we deal with race in society, how the legal system deals with race. And there are a number of different entities like the Kellogg Foundation, which has really started an initiative called the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation that we will be participating in beginning in 2018. So these are the kinds of discussions we have to have, particularly for a generation now that was born after the 70s and the 80s, who basically have no conscience of it. You know,
yes.
They think about it as a long drawn history from way back when, but they deal with it every day in a subliminal way, and it is something that we have to talk about in order to resolve and solve some of the issues.
And yes, and dealing right here in our area, where they built like they name a gym, a stadium after Lord G. Porter. Lord G. Porter was a racist and was one of the instigators that helped ran out the NAACP back in the day. And Miss Carrier was a strong fighter of that. And till today, I went over, I seen the newspaper. And I'm just seeing Miss Carrier, and I know how Miss Carrier felt about, Lord G. Porter.
Yeah, and actually we have a student here at the Law Center when we were involved in the Civil Rights and Restorative Justice Project going back to 2014 that did some research on the medical doctors who created a clinic in New Iberia, and actually the schools that were created in New Iberia to train African Americans during the World War II era to help them with skills. So when we look at activism, New Iberia was a place where African Americans were progressive and pushing towards, I guess, their elevation in society. Okay. Iberia Parish was a place where that was important. And so the folks that were in charge, the power brokers, did not want to see that happening, and therefore they drove out the folks that were doing the progressive kinds of things in New Iberia, so that again there would be this idea that white privilege would remain in focus and that there would be no relinquishment of that white privilege.
Right, and it not only just drove them out, but beat the piss out of one of this young lady who was, I can't think of her name right now, but I know Robbie know, because that was Robbie Kent. I mean, they beat him. They just threw him completely out of town, and there were no repercussion as of this day. I mean, we're proud to know that y'all had a student that did the investigation.
Yes, yes, and in fact, and so we're actually working. I got a call from a lady who is working in the library. She's a retiree, and there needs to be something to commemorate the fact that the people that worked in those times were dealt with, and we need to commemorate their vision for a community. Again, to always educate our younger individuals, because every generation will face its challenge.
Yes, sir.
Whether it be a Gina Six or an Alta Sterling,
yes,
or a Philando Castile, or whether it relates to any one of those things, every generation has this challenge, this wake-up call, and therefore we need to always constantly educate people about that.
And in closing, Mr. John, Chancellor John, I wanted to find out too, there was 2 young students here that was killed back in the day.
Yeah, actually, 45 years ago, on this campus in 1972, there were students who were fighting for equal educational opportunities, and they were led. One of the leaders was a guy out of Lafayette, who basically, we saw the tragic end on November 16, 1972. Leonard Brown, Denver Smith, they were pushing for equalization of educational opportunities, and their lives were snuffed out 45 years ago. And that's a story that's being told actually in a new documentary called Tell Them We Are Rising, the story of historically black colleges and universities. But that's a story we need to continue to tell, and we need to conclude and find out what actually happened. There's still a lot of mystery that's shrouded there. I spoke to Fred Prejean, who was out of Lafayette, who is still, I call him a freedom fighter.
Yes.
He's a freedom fighter, and he talks about those things, and I think it's important for us never to forget the lives of those 2 young men who their blood was spilled on this campus, and we have to understand what it means to our legacy in America. Well, this has been an in-depth interview. We want to thank you so much. My classmate out in Lurville, Louisiana, senior of 1977, and we're so proud of you. You were mentioned at the class reunion. We had our 40-year class reunion 2 weeks ago, and we seen some of your pictures and everything, and I got pictures on the phone. But we love you and continue the good work. And I just needed to find out how can I become a full-time lawyer? Well, got to take the test.